Hannah was a woman in her early 30s who lived alone in an isolated house on the outskirts of a small town. She was a writer and valued solitude, as it allowed her to concentrate on her mystery and suspense stories. However, the solitude he once enjoyed began to become suffocating. The house he lived in was an old building, surrounded by a dense forest. It was an idyllic country house, with large windows that let natural light flood the rooms. The perfect place for a writer looking for inspiration, Hannah thought. However, in recent months, Hannah began to experience a series of strange events that shook her peace of mind. It all started with small incidents, like doors opening on their own and the sound of footsteps in the empty hallway. At first, she attributed these occurrences to her imagination or the howling wind of the forest. But over time, events became more disturbing. One night, while working in her office, Hannah heard a distant voice echoing through the house. The voice was weak and indistinct, as if someone was whispering inaudible words. She tried to ignore the sound, convincing herself that her mind was playing tricks. As the nights passed, the whispers became more audible and intrusive. Hannah had difficulty concentrating on her work, as the whispering voice always seemed to be lurking, as if it was trying to communicate something, but the words were unintelligible. On a particularly cold night, Hannah was preparing dinner in the kitchen when she clearly heard her name whispered. She dropped the knife she was holding, the metallic sound echoing in the room. Her heart raced, and she felt a chill run down her spine. Her mind was filled with fear, but she knew there was no one but her in the house. Determined to find the source of the whispers, Hannah began to investigate. She searched every room in the house, checked every door and window, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The feeling of being watched persisted, and the voice continued to murmur her name, becoming more insistent each night. Hannah was becoming more and more desperate. She shared her experiences with some friends, but they believed her loneliness was making her go crazy. Her search for answers led her to research the history of the house, but nothing seemed to explain the strange events. The feeling of being alone at home turned into a constant nightmare. Hannah could no longer ignore the fact that something supernatural was happening in her isolated house in the woods. She was determined to discover the source of the whispers and the nature of the entity watching her. What she didn't know was that her investigations would lead her to a terrible, dark secret buried just outside the house. Hannah spent several sleepless nights, obsessed with the invisible presence that tormented her. She felt like she was in a constant nightmare, and that her sanity was hanging by a thread. She could no longer continue her life normally. Her search for answers consumed her. Determined to discover the origin of the whispers and the identity of the entity haunting her, Hannah began seeking help from experts in the paranormal and supernatural activity. She hired a local psychic who specialized in haunted house investigations in hopes that he could shed some light on the mystery. The medium arrived at Hannah's home with a bag of tools, including candles, incense, and protective amulets. He conducted a purification ceremony, which involved burning sage and reciting ancient prayers. As he performed the rituals, Hannah felt a charged atmosphere in the house, as if the air itself was electrified. After the ceremony, the medium deepened his investigation. He walked around the house, focusing on areas where Hannah had heard the whispers most often. It was clear that he was communicating with something invisible, as his responses were directed towards the void. Finally, the medium approached Hannah and whispered dark words to her. "There is a presence here, something that does not belong to this world. It is trying to communicate, but its words are distorted and filled with pain." The medium's words only added to the mystery for Hannah. Who or what was trying to communicate with her? The medium advised Hannah to continue investigating the house's history and find out if there were any traumatic events that could have linked the house to a supernatural entity. He left, leaving her with more questions than answers. In the days that followed, Hannah delved deeper into her search. She scoured city archives, researched old newspapers, and interviewed local residents. That's when she found a disturbing story about the house. Many decades ago, the house was lived in by a family, the Cartwrights. The family was known for keeping dark secrets and never getting involved with the local community. Rumors said that something terrible had happened in that house, something that had never been resolved. Hannah managed to contact one of the few elderly residents who still remembered the Cartwrights. He agreed to share information with her, but with a look of fear in his eyes. He told a disturbing story about the night the Cartwrights mysteriously disappeared. According to the elderly man, the Cartwrights were known for performing strange rituals in the house, often involving candles, incense, and incomprehensible whispers. The night they disappeared, a furious storm swept through the area, and lightning struck the Cartwrights' house, causing it to catch fire. When firefighters arrived on the scene, they found no trace of the Cartwrights, not even their bodies. The story horrified Hannah. Was it possible that the whispers that tormented her were the same ones that had disturbed the Cartwrights decades ago? And what had happened to the family? Determined to unravel the mystery, Hannah dove deeper into the investigation, searching for fire records and police reports from the time. What she discovered left her speechless. There were no records of fires or disappearances involving the Cartwrights. This led Hannah to a grim conclusion. Someone had erased all the evidence, as if wanting to hide the house's terrible secret. She was increasingly convinced that the mystery of the Cartwrights was directly related to the whispers and unseen presence that tormented her. Hannah's investigation led her to disturbing discoveries in a sinister past that now haunts her. She knew she needed to continue her search to unravel the mystery and finally find answers to the whispers that tormented her. What she didn't know was that as she got closer to the truth, as Hannah's investigation deepened, the invisible presence that tormented her seemed to be becoming bolder. The previously unintelligible whispers began to take shape, and Hannah was able to discern disturbing words and phrases. One night, as she lay in bed, Hannah clearly heard the whisper, "He found us." The voice was sinister and full of anguish. This revelation sent Hannah into a research frenzy, trying to figure out who or what was trying to communicate with her. She continued to seek information about the Cartwrights and their mysterious history. Her search led her to the town library, where she found old records of an unsolved police case involving the family. Apparently, authorities had investigated the Cartwrights' disappearance at the time, but there were no solid leads as to what had happened to them. Hannah also discovered that the Cartwright family had moved to the area from another town, where they had been involved in occult activities and mysterious rituals. This information left her even more intrigued and apprehensive. As she delved deeper into the investigation, Hannah began to experience even more disturbing supernatural events. Objects in the house began to move on their own, and ominous shadows roamed the hallways. The nights were haunted by vivid nightmares in which she saw the Cartwrights performing dark rituals in the house. Hannah decided to consult the medium who had previously helped her again. She shared her discoveries and the paranormal events that tormented her. The medium looked at her with a serious expression and said, "You are dealing with something very powerful, something that does not want to be discovered." He advised Hannah to look for a way to contact the spirits of the Cartwrights, believing they might hold answers to her whispers in the family's disappearance. Although reluctant, Hannah agreed to try communicating with the spirits of the house's former residents. The medium conducted a spirit communication session at Hannah's home, using candles, incense, and a Ouija board. During the session, Hannah felt a dark, oppressive energy taking over the room. The whispers became louder and more persistent, as if the spirits were trying to convey a desperate message. It was then that, through the Ouija board, Hannah began to receive answers from the spirits. The letters spelled out words and phrases that horrified her. The spirits claimed that something terrible had happened in that house, and they had fallen victim to supernatural forces that had trapped them in that place. The whispers were his desperate attempts to call for help. As the session continued, the spirits began to share details about the occult ritual the Cartwrights had performed on the night of their disappearance. It looked like they had tried to summon supernatural entities to gain power, but something had gone terribly wrong. The entities had turned against them, leading to the fire and the disappearance of the family. Hannah was shocked by the spirits' revelations. She now had a clearer understanding of what was happening, but she was also aware that she was tampering with forces beyond her understanding. She knew she needed to act cautiously and determinedly if she wanted to solve the mystery of the Cartwrights and put an end to the disturbing whispers that haunted her. What she didn't know was that as she got closer to the truth, the dark forces haunting the house would become even more threatening. The nightmare was far from over, and the battle between the unknown and Hannah's determination was just beginning. With the disturbing revelations made by the spirits of the Cartwrights, Hannah was determined to discover a way to free them, and at the same time, put an end to the whispers that tormented her. She knew she was entering dangerous territory, but the need to unravel the mystery was stronger than any fear she felt. Hannah sought help from experts in exorcism rituals and resolving paranormal activity. She wanted to perform a ritual that would allow the Cartwright spirits to find peace and hopefully drive away the dark entities imprisoning them in the house. A priest experienced in exorcisms agreed to help her. He performed a religious ceremony at Hannah's home, sprinkling holy water and reciting powerful prayers. During the ritual, Hannah felt an intense spiritual energy that seemed to surround her, as if dark entities were resisting her expulsion. The exorcism was a long and grueling process, but Hannah was determined to move forward. As the ritual continued, the whispers that tormented her began to intensify, as if the entities were fighting to stay in the house. The priest persisted, his unshakable faith being his main weapon against the unknown. Finally, after hours of exorcism, a harrowing scream echoed through the house. Hannah felt a sense of relief as the dark entities were driven away, but also a deep sadness as she realized that the spirits of the Cartwrights had not found the peace they so desired. She knew the work was far from over. The Cartwright spirits were free from the dark entities, but were still bound to the house, wandering in search of a resolution to their suffering. Hannah felt a strong connection to them, a responsibility to help them find the peace they longed for. Determined to fulfill this mission, Hannah sought out more information about the occult rituals the Cartwrights had attempted to perform. She found ancient texts that described the practices and symbols used in rituals, as well as the entities that had been invoked. With this information in hand, she was ready to try one last effort. Hannah met with the medium who had previously helped her and shared her intention to perform a ritual to release the spirits of the Cartwrights. The medium warned her about the risks, but also recognized Hannah's determination and agreed to help her. Together, they prepared the ritual, following instructions found in ancient texts. Candles were lit, mysterious symbols were drawn on the floor, and exotic incense filled the room. Hannah felt the presence of the Cartwright spirits as the ritual progressed, and the whispers that had tormented her for so long became clearer. Through the ritual, Hannah communicated with the spirits of the Cartwrights. She apologized on behalf of all who had ignored her suffering over the years, and pledged to help them find peace. The spirits seemed reluctant at first, but eventually agreed to follow Hannah's guidance to find redemption. The ritual required Hannah and the medium to create a portal between the planes of existence, allowing spirits to cross to the other side. As the portal formed, the house shook and vibrated, as if aware of the transcendence that was occurring. The air was electrified, and the whispers of the spirits intensified. With one last effort, the spirits of the Cartwrights crossed the portal to the peace they deserved. The sense of relief that filled the house was palpable. The whispers had stopped, and Hannah could finally breathe freely. The story of the house was reaching its conclusion. Hannah looked around, feeling a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. She knew the house would continue to be haunted by its history, but the Cartwright spirits were finally free. Hannah's journey, from being alone at home in a nightmare of whispers and apparitions, to an intense investigation and a supernatural confrontation, had come to an end. She emerged from the experience with emotional scars, but also with a deep understanding of the supernatural world and the strength of human determination to face the unknown. Hannah now knew that some stories had darker endings than others, but she was willing to face them regardless of the horrors that might unfold.